Yeah, that's really unusual. So yeah, I've seen him. I've seen him twice now.
That's great.
But we went yesterday and he wasn't there.
I've got pictures of the osprey, but they're not great. But
yeah,
thing's huge.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mammoth. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. We had great excitement on the street, right across the street. A couple of days ago, a goose come and he stands on the roof and he stands and he stands and he's there for ages, and then suddenly his mate comes. So the whole street are out looking, you know, the big excitement of the pandemic, 2 goose.
Sad. That's a sad story.
Sad. They're taking over your entertainment spot, Pauline.
Geese are the most entertaining birds anywhere. They're just so much fun to watch. And beautiful too at the same time. They're goofy and beautiful.
For sure, right? Yep.
Good morning, Birgit.
Morning, Joe.
How are you?
Good, thanks. And you?
Thank you.
Morning,
Fine. Thanks for joining us.
You're doing your bird watching thing today, are you, Joe?
I am. I hope I don't. I'm going to try not to bore you. I don't have a lot of pictures of like exotic birds that nobody knows the names of. I got a few of them, but not many.
We have some cardinals and some American goldfinches that regularly visit the feeder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cardinals are great.
We had rose-breasted grosbeaks this week.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wonderful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
This is warbler season at Thixon Woods. I was there last week. I got a few pictures I'll show, but this is where they all descend on Thixon Woods, all the birders, and they're shoulder to shoulder trying to get a picture of some little warbler that I have no idea why everyone's so excited that they are.
We have gangs of blue jays in the backyard regularly through the summer. I think the most we counted was a couple of years ago. There were 12 of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just giving her, going after food. And it was interesting. We actually looked up their behavior because they were all perched and then one at a time would dive down and go into the grass to feed on things. And then he'd take a break and then another one would go down. And apparently they have a pecking order.
So this is probably where they got the term pecking order from.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but even this weekend we were out doing yard work and there were some birds overhead that were creating quite a racket, and we looked up and it was a gang of blue jays just chasing each other around.
And blue jays do make a lot of noise, don't they, in a flock?
Yeah.
They chase the other birds away too. We have loads of them and they always amaze me. They're high in the tree and it's almost like they drop right down. They just come boom.
Yeah. We have beautiful cardinals too, a whole bunch of cardinals this year.
Yeah, there are lots of cardinals this year. There were tons of blue jays in the fall. It was a big year for blue jays.
Yeah.
They're hard to, when you're out in the forest, they're kind of harder to take. They tend to flit around a lot. Just when you've got one focus, they tend to take off.
Yeah.
Joe, what are those tiny birds? When John first came to visit me, he used to walk every day down by the 2nd March, and he would put up his hand. Birds would land on them, these tiny wee ones.
Oh, the chickadees.
Were they chickadees? I thought chickadees were Birgit. They were almost like a house wren, you know, they were tiny.
It's probably chickadees. Chickadees, like they'll come and like they'll bounce off your head. Like they think everyone has food. So no, it's true. All you have to do is stand there, and you'll attract the whole flock of chickadees.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're about starting time now. That was a nice precursor, Joe, into your talk. You got everyone all warmed up for it. I like it.
Everyone likes birds.
Yep. Well, my friend posted a picture of or a video of a robin dive bombing a raccoon that was standing on her fence yesterday.
Oh, wow. So must have been close to the nest or something.
I guess so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, welcome everyone to the May 11th edition of Bowmanville Rotary. It's great to have everyone out. We've got one guest so far, our guest speaker, Birgit. Linda is going to be doing a more fulsome introduction of Birgit shortly. Well, why don't we begin with a couple of toasts? First to Her Majesty, to the Queen.
To the Queen.
Queen.
Canada.
Canada.
And Rotary International.
Rotary International.
And we'll carry on with a land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge that here in Bowmanville, we're on the territory covered by the Williams Treaty, and that this land is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Scugog Island First Nation. We offer our gratitude to the indigenous peoples for their care of the land, their teachings about our earth and our relations. I kind of like that addition to this. I was a little bit on the fence, but I really do like it. Invocation. Ellie, would you do our invocation for us, please?
Yes, I will. Let's give thanks. Thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health. We need to fulfill our callings for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Couple more things on the guest front. I see that Ken Hurst from Ajax Rotary joined. I'm going to stop introducing him as a guest. And we're just going to make a couple of changes in Club Runner, Ken, and there you have it. You're a Bowmanville Rotarian. And
send him a bill.
Exactly. I'm also going to not introduce Jennifer Turner as a guest anymore because changes have been made on Club Runner and her membership has been reactivated. Jen is a Bowmanville Rotarian officially again now. So
Makes me very happy. Thanks, Steve.
Welcome. We don't really have a formal way to reinduct members that are kind of reestablishing themselves. So we're just great to have you back.
Well, it's great to be back.
All right. Birthdays and anniversaries. Pauline.
Yes, President Steve, we celebrate this week. Bonnie Cito has a birthday tomorrow. And Wayne, have you managed to get a nice card and a gift all planned? Because Wayne and Carol are celebrating their wedding anniversary tomorrow. And Ellie Brooks, 4 years of service above self. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
There's another important birthday today. Someone close to the club, Marion Timmerman's birthday is today. So if you're friends with her, make sure you reach out to Marion. What a firecracker. Okay. With that, over to you, Linda, to introduce our guest.
Okay. It's my pleasure this morning to welcome Birgit Umaigba to our club this morning, and especially because this is Nurses Week and it's also Florence Nightingale's birthday. So I'll give you a little intro to Birgit just now. Birgit's an ICU nurse working in the GTA. She also teaches in the Bachelor of Nursing program at Centennial College and is the clinical course director for internationally trained nurses at York University. So welcome, Birgit, lovely to have you here. So I think what we all want to know is, what is it like to work in a COVID unit?
Thank you for having me and good morning, everyone. It's very challenging. For the past many months and even before the pandemic, we've been working short staff in many ICUs. So I work across the ICUs, but predominantly in Durham region. Working in the COVID unit right now comes with a lot of stress. We are always working short staff. Sometimes I walk into the unit and we are like 5, 6, 7 to 10 nurses short. So that means we are doing twice the work. Sometimes even like were tripled with patients. So normally in an ICU, you have one nurse to one very sick intubated patient. The odd times you have one nurse to two patients that are ready to be discharged from ICU down to the ward. But that's not the case anymore. So we're starting to see one nurse to two patients, so two critically ill patients and sometimes three patients, because as you must have heard on the news, nurses are quitting. A lot of people are tired. Nurses are burnt out. So we have a lot of sick calls. So many people can't even show up because they have, different reasons, family members that are immunocompromised. So I have colleagues that have taken leave of absences since the first wave. So for so many different reasons, we're always working short. So working in the COVID unit right now is very stressful. And we have our full PPEs on when we go into the rooms. So that means like an N95 mask, a face shield, eye goggles, isolation gown, gloves, boots. And a lot of times you're in the room for at least 45 minutes to an hour, depends on how unstable the patient is. If you have to turn them, if they have a cardiac arrest in between, you're even there for about 2 to 3 hours. So it is very stressful.
Sure, I'm sure. Well, I cannot imagine looking after two or sometimes three critically ill patients, because intensive care by definition means one nurse to one patient. So what kind of stress does this place on you and your colleagues, Birgit?
There is moral distress, first of all, because a lot of times we feel that responsibility to be able to provide the highest level of quality of care for our patients. However, when you're doubled with patients that are sick, you can't really split yourself in two. I remember one shift I had two patients that were intubated, and they were both decompensating at the same time. So meaning their oxygenation was like dropping so fast at the same time. And my colleagues were also busy. So I had to like start, like, call the respiratory therapist, calling. I'm like, can someone just take over that patient, because I can only be one place at a time. And so it puts a lot of stress on you, and the nurses are getting injured too, right? Because you're rushing to do the work, you're rushing to turn patients. I remember not last week, a few weeks ago, like I sprained my neck a little. I'm like, okay, I need a break. I ended up, calling in sick myself for my subsequent shift. So there's a lot of stress. Nurses we're missing our breaks many times, holding our pee, like, not getting to the hydration station to drink water. So that's a reality on the ground. So it's a lot of physical stress, mental, especially the fact that family members are not coming in as they used to, so we're answering numerous calls, trying to be that family member for the patient when they take their last breath. So we've had to be the family for patients many times as they took their last breath. This also happened with my patient last week. Family wasn't able to be there. So I was the last person to hold her hand and, just cry. And family eventually came in just to see the body. So these are tough times for us, for sure. Very psychologically draining.
Very difficult physically, mentally, and emotionally. Are you able to switch off when you go home at night?
It's a lot harder nowadays, I must admit, because these are unprecedented. I have never seen this many deaths before. So the first shift after my rotation, I usually still have these vivid memories of my patients, especially because we're not now seeing an increased amount of code blues, so cardiac arrest. Again, there's short staffing and nurses are not able to get to the rooms when, they normally would. So that's just another topic. So when I get home, a lot of times the first day is really trying to get over those thoughts and the memories and the alarms, alarms going off constantly because these patients are being monitored very closely. So we have parameters that was set to alert us when their values are not within the range of stats. So constant alarms ringing in my ears at home. And since the third wave, I started having some dreams about patients, and that's never happened to me before. And some of my colleagues have also said the same thing. So it's hard to switch off. I try to refocus on non-nursing stuff and, listen to music, go for walks when I can, when I'm not so physically drained, because it's so hard to get off my bed a lot of times. So yeah, I just try to do something to switch off.
Yeah. Do you ever work fully staffed, Birgit?
Very rare. Even prior to COVID, it was so rare.
How long is your shift?
My shifts are 12 hours long.
12 hours.
So we do 4 12-hour shifts. So a lot of people do 2 days, 2 nights. Some of us do just days, some do nights, so 48 hours straight. But since the pandemic and being so short staffed, people are putting in 60 hours a week. So going in overtime, you're there and there's nobody to relieve you to go home. Sometimes you're stuck with the patient because you can't abandon them, but then you also have a family. So it's like, oh my gosh. Not until someone shows up, you can't really just leave a critically ill patient and abandon them. So
I know you have, I think she's 10, your daughter, Birgit?
Yeah, she's turning 10 in August.
What sort of toll does that take on her?
I try not to bring much of work home. I try to make sure I'm not sharing like stories and all that. But she does have many days she wishes, I was home with her, especially with online school. But she's really self-directed. I'm very happy to have her. But then I remember when I had COVID myself, I had to isolate. She was totally distraught. Like she thought I was gonna die. So that was really a lot of burden for her and for myself. And thank God we went through that, and I'm here now. But yeah.
Yeah, hard on you both.
Yeah, so hard.
Birgit, I nursed during the SARS outbreak in 2003, and it was always a huge fear of mine that I'd be sent to work in another unit. I mean, I worked 20 years in obstetrics. I didn't know anything else. And as we used to say, you don't take the guy off the loading dock and stick him in accounting, do you? But they think it's okay to move nurses like me out of a unit that I'm very familiar with and very competent in. So do you have other nurses drafted into your ICU to help out?
Oh yes, that's been happening since the third wave. I think with the emergency order, nurses can be redeployed, against their will. So I have colleagues that are working with us, and they never had interest in being, ICU nurses or whatnot. And it's a very stressful environment for them, especially just walking in and seeing like a patient on life support, like all the IV tubes and every kind of tube you can think of. So it's very intimidating at first. I met a nurse last week, and she said she only has 2 years left to retire. And, she was voluntold to be here. And, it's more like you don't have a choice. And I said, is this what you like to do? She said she's open to new opportunities, but not at the stage of her career. She's not really interested in doing this. So a lot of nurses, tell the same stories. They're being forced literally to come to ICU.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that's like. Are you ever pressured into taking extra shifts?
All the time. Like it's done in a very subtle way. Like, you because you feel this more obligation to your colleagues to, they're working short, and you know what it is like to work short. So getting those calls on your days off to ask if you're available, those are, micro pressuring, because you're like, okay, I'm supposed to be off. So why am I getting these calls? Oh, can you come in? We're 5 nurses short. We're 7 nurses short. Like, and even though you have other plans, sometimes you end up like, okay, I'm just gonna go help because I wonder how my colleagues are doing. Like, and the patients too, right? Like, it's so hard. You can't even start to imagine what it is like to to work short and the patient receives suboptimal care, and definitely mistakes are bound to happen. So it puts the patient at risk as well. So yeah, we feel pressured a lot.
So we've heard a lot about the changing demographic of COVID patients, and the ICUs are seeing much younger patients than they were a few months ago. Is that the case on your unit now?
So because I have different units, I see different dynamics. And so far, the third wave has mostly affected the younger population, definitely. We're seeing people in their 20s, their 30s, and they're coming in with an oxygen saturation level of, a normal level is usually over 95. They're coming in with a level of 25. 45, 50, that's scary. I've never seen that. Even my colleagues have had like 30 years experience. They said, I've never seen this. And you know, those patients have to be either intubated right away. And with ICUs being full, they've had to ship patients from Emerge to another facility because there was no room in ICU. So the risk associated with that too, it's been very
stressful, yeah.
distressing.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that if you were shipping patients, because I know that they've implemented this thing now where they don't have to ask the family, they just send them off to like, I don't know, I think I heard Thunder Bay the other day. Have you done that yourself? Has your unit had to do that?
Yeah, my unit has had to send patients to Kingston quite a couple of times.
Right.
We still, you know, tell the family as nurses, call the family, you know, as courtesy to say, okay, this is what's happening. And it's very stressful for families, you know, to have their loved ones shipped to wherever. So yeah, we just try to play that role and say, okay, this is where they're sending your loved one to. They're going to be in good hands, and you know, it's for the best, hopefully.
Yeah. I've wondered many times, like, if there was a huge, God forbid, a huge external disaster, such as a building collapse or a big train wreck, for example, do you have any, I know there's always different codes for things like this, but do you have anything in place just now when you're finding it hard to handle, you know, from day to day? What would happen if there was a big disaster? Do they have?
I don't know. I don't know, because even like right now we're focusing on COVID and it's just out of control. So I can't even imagine that. I hope that doesn't happen, you know, but it's like, we've discussed this, like there's no capacity, there's no workforce. We've heard of numerous beds being added to ICUs. Beds are not, beds are meaningless without the people to actually provide care. Just to look after one COVID patient, oh my goodness, because they're always turned on their bellies to improve their oxygenation. It takes 4 to 6 nurses to do that, 2 respiratory therapists just to do that. So imagine having 10 patients or 30 patients like that. So we are barely thriving.
Yeah.
So I cannot imagine adding anything else to this.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen.
I really do.
So to protect frontline nurses under extremely difficult circumstances, there is a Bill of Rights for nurses which states, a nurse's primary responsibility is to provide safe and competent nursing care. Any circumstance that may compromise professional standards or any observation of questionable, unethical, or unlawful practice should be made known to an appropriate person or authority. So my question to you, Birgit, is this was put in place to support nurses, but during COVID, like what does management do to support nurses that are deployed to an unfamiliar unit and are really out of their depth in there? Do you get support from management?
I'd like to say yes. But you know, I'm not redeployed, so that question will be better answered by my colleagues who have been redeployed in terms of how much support they get. But I know management tries to buddy them with, you know, senior nurses to provide that initial orientation and just that support to get them familiar to the unit. I know they check on them in terms of their skills and what they're progressing on, and I know they actually, you know, just check on them in terms of how they're doing in general. Outside of that, I'm not really sure.
Okay, okay. I know that burnout amongst nurses is really high. I mean, at Women's College, we always used to say, who cares for the caregiver? Who cares for that? You're caring for everybody else, but who cares for you? Have any of your colleagues left the profession?
So many, so many. With the first wave, I had so many of my colleagues moved to different areas of nursing. Others left totally. Like I said, some people took leave of absences and they're not coming back. Some left for the States because of they got more competitive offers in terms of being a critical care nurse over in the States compared to what we're being paid here. So many have left. A few are leaving right now, and I know more will leave. Also because you know, a lot of nurses are mothers and some are sole support parents, and right now with online school, you have some have no choice. You have like 2-3 kids and they're all toddlers. I have a colleague, she's a sole support parent and her kids were young, so she had to quit totally just to be home. So yeah, people are leaving and more people will leave just from the distress. And right now we're trying to have our voices heard in terms of eliminating Bill 124 that caps our wages to like 1% increase every 3 years. And that's about like 30-40 cents a year. So over like 40,000 nurses have come together to say, okay, enough is enough. We are tired. We're so disrespected. We are doing the work, double the workload, and yet we're not recognized because now we've seen some physicians being redeployed to ICU to work as nurse extenders in that role of a nurse. However, you know, when they're not familiar with you know, wound care, they're not familiar with IV medications and all of that. And nurses are having to train these physicians, and these nurses are being paid $33 to $48 an hour max, no matter the number of years they have, 30-40 years. And the doctors that are being redeployed, being trained by the nurses, are being paid anywhere from $350 to $450 an hour. So we've started like petitions and all of that. It's very, very disappointing.
It's demoralizing.
Totally.
And I've been reading a lot about Bill 24, and you know, you hear this hero to zero because you're getting 1% for 3 years. So you're working alongside some doctor from wherever, and he's making 3. Yes, it really is demoralizing. Do you find you're being any more respected during this?
I find the general public has, you know, stepped up really to show more appreciation, and we really do appreciate that. But I think it just ends with the public. But in terms of the government, I find we're even more disrespected.
Right, right. Yeah, I know in my experience, it was always frowned upon to speak out with repercussions from management for doing so. But you've been really vocal and good for you in the media during COVID. What have you felt the need to speak out about during COVID? I know Bill 124 is really high on your list, but
so yeah, I started out like speaking up implementing paid sick days for workers because I've actually looked after patients that came into ICU because they contracted COVID-19 from someone at a factory, for example, that had no paid sick days and came to work sick. So, and we've seen these people actually die, and we've seen childcare workers actually contract COVID-19 and actually come to our ICU and actually died. So there's like nursing is advocacy, and there's no way we can actually keep looking after a patient without advocating for the very things that affect them and bring them to the ICU. Right. So and also contracting COVID myself, so I felt the need to speak up in terms of advocating for paid sick days, and then other things came up like prioritizing pregnant women for immunization, prioritizing nurses. I haven't had my second shot, but I know of so many people that work from home that have had their second shot. So many of my colleagues that work in ICU respiratory therapists. We're constantly dealing with airway. We suction COVID patients' mouth like every 15 minutes sometimes, and we're not fully vaccinated. So we had to also advocate for that. And only yesterday did we get the, green light that yes, nurses, PSWs, and whoever is providing direct care in such a close manner to COVID patients will be prioritized. So I find there are a lot of gaps, and there are a lot of inequities that actually place certain categories of people at a disadvantage, and there's the need to speak up.
Good for you. Yeah. Hard to believe that you haven't had your second vaccination. Very hard to believe. Yeah. I know that Ford and his government, after much wrangling and pressure, have implemented 3 days. What would you like to see?
10 universal paid sick days, because I've said this, 3 days is it's a waste of time, because the virus requires you to isolate for 14 days. There's no way you're going to report your symptoms knowing that you lose 11 days of income if you isolate. So why would you even report those symptoms in the first place? I've seen people that would not even go get tested, and those symptoms are potentially COVID symptoms, and they go to work sick because they have no choice. So 3 days is 3 days is nothing.
Okay. Great. Birgit, in closing, what sort of message would you like to get out this morning?
I would like the public to please call, email your MPPs to, implement 10 universal paid sick days. We also want to see a support for nurses that goes beyond the claps, but actually urging the government to repeal Bill 124. I believe nurses are worth more than 10%, especially now we've seen an increased workload. So we should be compensated equally for the work we do. I would also like to see people supporting for more mental health support for nurses, because the trauma is right now. We're not even waiting for a post-traumatic stress disorder. The trauma is happening right now. And people are going home in tears. Nurses are going home in distress, having vivid dreams of a dead patient. So we need paid sick days to prevent people from coming to an ICUs and putting so much burden on us.
Right. Well, nursing is an extremely demanding job, both physically and mentally. And now more than ever, we owe a huge amount of gratitude for what nurses are facing day in and day out. Birgit, every night and every day, I think of the nurses heading into work. Truly, I do. So, Birgit, it was lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting this morning. It was a real pleasure to talk with you and learn more about what it's like to be an ICU nurse. And I'm sure our members have many questions for you, so I'll open it up to them.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Looks like Lyle has a question. Lyle.
Just unmute myself here. Bridget, one of the major concerns with the third wave was that the ICUs would become so crowded that you would have to start triaging patients, basically selecting who's going to live and who's going to die. With things being stretched so thin, is that perhaps unofficially happening? Are you somehow forced to pay attention to those patients who have a better chance of survival than those who do not?
Thanks for that question. Personally, I haven't seen it happen yet, but I have colleagues that are saying it's unofficially happening. The other day we had patients at an emergency department that had no oxygen up to flow left. So it's basically the first step to providing oxygenation for patients before they eventually intubated. So that emergency department ran out of that equipment up to flow. So patients were suffocating and struggling to breathe in regular masks. So that's triaging at some level, I would say, because they could have had the opportunity of being intubated or actually being on the OptiFlow just to help their oxygenation. So yeah, we're seeing it in certain forms, but that's the most I've seen so far.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Birgit. People who work in high pressure environment and also work long hours, usually you can end up making mistakes. Have you seen that? Is that a problem that you've encountered so far?
Yes, I do on my Twitter page. I actually do have a lot of nurses that send me direct messages just because they don't feel supported enough to speak up. A nurse actually shared with me that she almost hung the wrong medication, so she was lucky enough to catch it right at the bedside. So which was like, she said it was very distressing for her because that patient could have actually died if she had hung that medication, but she was so stressed and she was trying to run to one room from the other. So, and I believe a lot of mistakes were happening, unfortunately. Yeah, and then some also underreported. A nurse also shared that she actually did make a mistake and she was reprimanded by management a lot. And that was, disappointing because somehow the systems have put nurses in a place where they have no choice. Well, we try not to make mistakes, but we're humans. If we were being overworked in that manner, mistakes are bound to happen, and then being reprimanded for that is just another level of, lack of sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. I have another question. I think it was about a year ago when this business started that the provincial government announced that they were going to train and hire something like 6,000 nurses. Is anything happening with that? Do you know?
No, I only know that there's been a cutback on nurses for many years, and the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario has been urging and pleading to stop the cutback on nurses, to stop the cutback. When I graduated nursing, an entire unit was closed. Those nurses were laid off because for some reasons, I don't know. And that time I couldn't even start working in ICU because there were no opportunities for me, even though I really desperately wanted to be an ICU nurse. And then I ended up working in other areas of nursing. And a lot of nurses that were interested too in ICU then couldn't because there was nurses who had been laid off. So as we know, Ontario has the lowest RON to population ratio in all of Canada. So I don't see those numbers anywhere.
Okay, next up we have Leah.
Good morning, Birgit. Thank you for sharing your story. Linda had mentioned that you teach as well in your role, and I just can't imagine, first off, having the energy to go beyond the ICU every day and teach students. Has your teaching changed since the pandemic has started in terms of preparing nurses to head out into this field? And how do you prepare them to face what they are about to face?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Actually, teaching has changed a lot. With the pandemic, we've had to try different things, really. We moved from in-person to virtual simulations where students are being taught like real life scenarios, but virtually, not the same. Also, we've taken students back to the bedside in some hospitals that are allowing students to come in, but are at a reduced number, right? I used to have 8 students every semester, but now I do have 4 just because the hospital cannot accommodate more students. So we're also seeing very low registration into the nursing program because students are also, they read too, they follow the news and like, okay, I'm not gonna step into a profession that's just, so underpaid, overworked for what? And nurses are starting to speak up. So I try to tell my students that, yeah, we're here. It's a lot of work, but we can change things, and hopefully we can advocate for better policies that are favorable to not only the nurses, because in the end it's for the patients as well. At some point, everyone's going to need care, and we need to put things in place for that to be right. So I try to have my students, be vocal in terms of what they want. I try to have them involved with the RNAO and just try to find their paths and advocating and adding their voices to equitable policies. And yeah, so far my students stay with me. They don't drop off. um, yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You're
Excellent.
welcome.
Next, I think we've got time for another couple of questions. So we've got Roy Snow up next, I think.
Actually, Leah stole my question, but I just wanted to say to Bridget, I come from a long-term care background. I've been an administrator in long-term care. I just want to say I appreciated the nursing staff and what the nurses encountered on a daily basis. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. And I recognize the stress and the burdens that you bear each day. So thank you for hanging in there.
Thank you so much, Roy.
Excellent. Johanna.
Well, you know, as much as Roy was saying that someone took his question, Roy took my sentiment. So, Birgit, I was just going to say thank you so much for such an informative talk. It's been wonderful to listen to this. And I think it gives us a bigger perspective, certainly bigger than ourselves. You know, we hear about it in the news all the time, but we don't necessarily live and breathe it every day. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. I see a couple of questions online. One of them is from Dana.
Dana was my next, Johanna. So
oh, there you go.
We'll
Okay.
get there, right?
We'll get there. Okay. There's a couple of questions online, but thank you so much, Birgit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, welcome, Dana. Dana is a guest of Joe Solway, a fellow birder, and he met her at the Rotaract conference this past weekend. She's got a question for you, and I think we'll probably wrap it up after that one. But here you go. Go ahead, Dana.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me in the chat. So I was just wondering if you noticed difference between their treated. You mentioned that nurse was reprimanded heavily for doing so. Just wondering if the doctors experienced the same when they inevitably made mistakes as well.
Oh, thanks, Anna. Hi. Honestly, the doctors, they're pretty much hush-hush between themselves. So they're actually supported or reprimanded by it would be the chief of whatever unit. So for example, in ICU, with the chief of ICU physicians, and we don't hear about theirs. So I'm mostly familiar with the nursing part of it. Yeah, yeah.
So it's quite divided in the hospital then between the nurses.
We hope it's not a divide. We hope to be, you know, we try to work together as a team. And honestly, there have been a lot of doctors recently stepping up to say enough is enough. Nurses are putting so much work. There's actually a group of doctors, William Osler Hospital, that actually wrote a letter to say that our doctors are earning this much and nurses are training them for less than, you know, 10 times less the pay. So this is not right. So we are so happy to see a support from doctors at this point. Of course, there's still a lot of doctors who say, okay, don't compare our salaries, and obviously not. They deserve what they earn, and we should also deserve what we earn. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, Birgit, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. As some of the comments in the chat have said, a fantastic talk, really very informative. And for folks that just, you know, we can't see the what's happening inside the hospitals and how it's impacting you frontline workers, it's really been eye-opening. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and you're welcome to come back to the Rotary Club of Bowmanville at any time. Hopefully next time it'll be in person and you'll be more well rested, right? You're more than welcome to stay on the line and enjoy the rest of the program, or if you have to drop off and go somewhere else, that's okay too.
I love that. I'm gonna run. Thank you so much for having me and for listening.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great. Does anyone have any happy bucks they'd like to share? Things that have gone well or they'd like to brag about this week? No hands. Nothing happy going on? Leanna, not about your new lawn or, right? Okay.
Well, I have one. I just got my last shopping list for tomorrow, and I guess that's pretty happy about that. Although I enjoyed doing it, I guess it's time to wrap it up.
Yep. Pauline. Muted. Muted, Pauline.
I have two happy bucks. Very happy to see two geese on the roof across the road.
Again?
But that's really not my happy buck. My happy buck is, and a little bit of a sad buck, my 5-year tenure as the entertainment director at Wilmot Creek has now come to a close, and it's been a great run, and I've enjoyed working with a great bunch of people, and I'm going to miss it, but I'm glad that I've got some, and John's glad I've got some more time in my hands, because he's already got me roped in to be supporting him in his new role.
I was going to ask what you were going to do with all your free time now that you're not the entertainment director and you're not going to be the secretary at the end of June. So, all right, John's already conscripted you.
Yeah, he has.
Okay, all right, that's fantastic news. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So with that, Joe Solway is going to tell us something about what he's learned during the pandemic. Joe, over to you. Muted, Joe. You're muted, Joe. You're still muted, Joe.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you're good.
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, it's really kind of difficult to follow, that talk from Birgit with other stuff about the pandemic, but life has been going on. And one of the things that's been happening is that a lot of people who have been fortunate enough to do so, like me, have discovered new interests. And one of the things that came out of one of our recent administration committee meetings was that, hey, let's give people a chance to talk about some of the things that they might have learned or developed. And so in my case, and I've told people about this, I started birding, which is really the perfect activity for the COVID era, outdoors in nature, socially distanced, a lot of walking, which is good because I need that. And last March, with the onset of COVID, I went to Thixon Woods in Whitby. That is an old growth forest at the foot of Thixon, which I was told was a great spot for birds on migration and all year round. And I'm just going to share my screen and tell you and show you what I have found there and other places. So there you go. This, of course, is a cardinal, and they're everywhere. Everyone loves cardinals. They have a wonderful, distinctive call, and they're beautiful and expressive. And where you find male cardinals, you'll find female cardinals. This is the female cardinal. I'm just trying to get my screen. Just a second here. Yep. There we go. Yep. There. That's a blue jay. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get the other screen off. Not working this properly. Anyway, there you go. That's a blue jay. Lovely look on his face. I'm not sure what he's considering. I'm not even sure it's a he, but anyway, that's a blue jay. They're everywhere. They're harder to take pictures in the wild because they do tend to go sort of in the middle of trees and they move around a lot. This is a bird, again, in Thixon Woods called the yellow-bellied sapsucker. It is really a woodpecker. It could be called the yellow-bellied woodpecker, and I guess it's sucking sap from that tree. And I just really like saying the name yellow-bellied sapsucker. It's always fun to say. Birders don't really think of robins as real birds. I'm discovering, oh, that's just a robin. But this robin I love because he or she looked like they were sort of surveying their domain. And it reminded me of like a shot from The Lion King that went out on the cliff. And speaking of kings, this is the king of woodpeckers. If you see one, you're really fortunate. Again, this was one that landed near me in Thixon Woods. It's called a Pileated Woodpecker. It's the size of a crow. It's the largest woodpecker in North America. And from what I am told, was the inspiration for Woody Woodpecker. This is, I'll just, if you can see my cursor, you look here and you'll see the outline of an owl. This is a great horned owl. Obviously it's a female sitting in the nest, and they nest in nests that are built by other birds. I think this might have been a crow's nest. This was taken last, I guess it was last March. The nest this year fell down, and so the owls are not around, but that's the mummy owl. And that's the daddy owl in a tree nearby, looking on and protecting his brood. Went back a little while later, and there was poking up from the nest a little owlet. You see the little white fur. I think there was another owl there, I'm told, another owlet, but it fell out of the nest and did not survive. Later on in the spring and summer, you'll see that I have various shots here. I kept going back. Various shots of the owl in various states of maturity, turning into like a real owl down there. And I'm not sure if the one I see there now is that owl or he's left. I'm not sure, but it was kind of cool to see it grow up. This is another owl. It's called the Sowet. It's a very small, it's about the size of a softball. It hunts all day or hunts all night and sleeps all day. This owl, again, in Thixon Woods, they're about 8 to 10, 6, 8, 10 feet off the ground that they like to roost, and this drew quite a crowd. Everyone was trying to be respectful and not wake it up, though. This, of course, the ubiquitous seagull, ring-billed seagull. It was taken at the Whitby Harbor. They like to make lots of noise, and they're great to take pictures of. This was taken at the marsh next to OPG, if anyone's ever been down there. It's a wonderful, peaceful walk along that marsh. These are trumpeter swans. You'll see that it has a black beak, unlike the mute swans, which have the orange beak, which you see more of. These swans were actually almost extinct in Ontario. They're native to Ontario. A couple of hundred years ago, we pretty well lost them, but in the 1980s, a guy named Harry Lumsden, who was a retired biologist, started a conservation program in Wye Marsh. He introduced them there, and they've since been reintroduced in a lot of places in Ontario. And this is a family of them. They're lovely to watch, and they're back again this year. Now they're grown up and they're going to have new babies. And this is called the heraldic pose. You'll see waterfowl do this to dry their wings. Also, I guess hawks do it sometimes, but it's really quite spectacular when they do this. And they're sort of putting on a show. It's gorgeous. This is the mute swan that we're all familiar with. This was taken at the Cranberry Marsh, which is at the foot of Lynn Shores in Whitby. It has the orange beak, and you'll see many, many of them. It's called the mute swan because it's actually quieter than other swans. These are two more mute swans. These were at last spring at Newcastle, at the marsh in Newcastle. Rachel will know that marsh well. This is a down here, that's the nesting mound that they build. And they could be the male or the female in the nest because both of them actually incubate the eggs. And the eggs come out and they hatch and they look like this. These are cygnets, again, taken in Newcastle Marsh. I got down nice and low to give it a nice kind of sort of nature shot. I really love that shot. The cygnets are beautiful. Oops, wrong way. More babies. These are baby ducklings taken in the Bowmanville Harbor, right down in the marshy area where the fishers go. And these are little ducklings. This one really struggling, trying its best to swim. And the goslings. These were taken at Westside Marsh in the pond there. I love this shot. It's the archetypal shot of the parents with the little geese trailing by, the biggest to little one trying to keep up. I think that's a male, and because the male has the longer neck. These ones, they grew up, and maybe not these ones, but when they grow up, they look like this. This was a family of them walking in Bowmanville down to the water. And the reason I love this shot so much was that if you look here, while everyone else is looking forward, this one is looking right at me. They're curious. I absolutely love geese. I could watch them all day, and there were many, many thousands of them, maybe millions of them down by the waterfront this winter. Here's a couple of them having, I guess, a bit of a lover spat in the down at Cranberry Marsh. They're so expressive. They're just so great to watch. And I guess they made up. This is what they look like up close. This was a wonderful day at Cranberry Marsh earlier this spring. It was nice and foggy. I'm not sure if people remember, it was impossible to drive in, but the marsh was gorgeous. It was really still, and there was gauze over everything, and nice soft focus, and it was a beautiful day for pictures. So beautiful that I took these guys walking along the shore at the marsh. This is obviously a photographer, although it kind of looks like he's playing a banjo or something, but I think it's a camera. The iconic shot of geese in their V formation flying overhead, a very common sight this winter, in the fall, in the spring, and any time of year. And this is what they look like up close when they're flying. They're just absolutely gorgeous to watch in flight. And also in silhouette. They're beautiful in silhouette against the sky, against the clouds, beautiful to look at. Again, more silhouette shots in the winter. This shot was really nice. I got them against turned it into black and white. It's gorgeous. Flying up close, this is again at the marsh, sort of an iconic Canadian nature shot, and then flying over Lake Ontario. These are not geese at all. These are actually tundra swans on their way north up to the tundra. And the reason I like that, they're in a V, and the reason I like this shot so much is if you look down here, there's a Canada goose who's attached himself or herself to the flock, and I'm wondering what happened when they got to the end and it realized that it wasn't among its brethren and sistren. This shot was taken in the Soper Creek Valley looking north. These are actually brant geese on their way up to the Arctic, and so I'm told by an expert. And the reason I love this shot so much is it reminds me of Alfred Hitchcock's face. It was one of Hitchcock's face, which I love because I'm going to segue into this Hitchcockian shot taken down at the Newcastle shore. These are cormorants who every spring sort of descend on Lake Ontario and other lakes up from the south. They kind of eat all the vegetation off trees. Some people don't like them, but to me, it's just kind of part of nature, and they're beautiful to watch in flight. I was lucky enough to get this picture last spring in the Bowmanville Harbor. You'll see the swan in the background, and lucky enough, as I say, to get this shot. At the Cranberry Marsh, there are a lot of heron. I don't know if heron is the plural, but there are a lot of heron down there. This is an old one, I think. I love this shot. It kind of looks like a rabbi. And here's up close, the rabbi shot again. I just love them. They're wonderful to look at. And they'll stand there for a long time just looking back at you. This one was busy catching fish. I think it was a younger one. It had just finished sticking its beak in there. And that's why the heron hang out so much at marshes, I think, because their fish are plentiful and they can see them, and they're at the shallow. So this guy caught a fish and ate happy lunch. These also down at Cranberry Marsh, these are snowy egrets. They're just beautiful to watch. They're so graceful. These ones look like they were dancing. So I really like this shot, kind of like doing a minuet. This was taken in the Bowmanville Creek pond there, about halfway down the path. This is our flock of ducks live there all year round. This was taken in the winter, obviously, in the middle of a snowstorm. And when you get too close to these ducks, they fly away. And I was very lucky enough to get my camera up quickly enough to take the picture of this duck, this mallard. These are mallards, by the way, with the ice around his beak. I love that shot. More ducks. This was taken again down by the marsh at OPG. These are ring-necked ducks, even though they have ring bills. They're passing through. They were there for a couple of weeks. I managed to get a few pictures of them, and it was quite wonderful to see them coming in and out. These
Joe,
ducks. Yes.
Joe, as you click through the pictures, Phil Benner has a question for you. And we've only got a few minutes left. I want to make sure Phil had a chance to ask.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
It wasn't more of a comment than a question. I mean, I think the photos of what you're doing is wonderful, but I just wanted to be the first to congratulate you on surviving your experience with Canada's velociraptor, otherwise known as the Canada goose, given the personal injury I have suffered many times.
Yeah, I know. I've had to keep my distance a couple of times along that shoreline, and more than once I've picked up a stick. But there, if you steer clear of them, then they'll steer clear of you. They're actually pretty friendly. I just have a few more. Let me finish this up, but thanks, Phil. Thanks for the kind words. These are two ducks in the heraldic pose. I love it. It looks like ballet to me. And here they are. I don't know if it's the same two, but I love this shot. Ducks are so wonderful. These mallards always look like they have a smile on their faces. This was taken in my backyard. I don't know how old this bird was, but it was about, it's still blind. It's a song sparrow, so I'm told. It had nested in a hedge. Mom had nested in a hedge, and it was there for a few days, and I hope it survived, because just down the street there was a sharp-shinned hawk who had taken up roost just a couple of a few doors down, and I hope he didn't get those little babies. Later in the summer, we had 3 of these Merlin hawks who were squawking around the neighborhood, chasing all the birds away. This is one of them I got at the top of a spruce tree in our front yard. This is a red-tailed hawk that I managed to get a picture of flying over the factories on Baseline Road. It's hard to get pictures of hawks sometimes because they're always against the sky and they come out in silhouette, but that one was pretty good. Here's another red-tailed hawk. This is what they look like up close. This was taken down at Cranberry Marsh. Love the look on his face, protecting what is his lunch. And I'm not sure what that was, but it looked tasty. A couple more, one last, this is a turkey vulture. You see them flying all over the place this time of year. This one landed on a chimney on a house next to Fixin Woods, and I was lucky enough to get a picture of it, a turkey vulture. Osprey, they say this is down at West Side Marsh, coming off one of the platforms. They say the osprey's wingspan is 7 feet, but I don't believe it. It looks like about 17 feet. But anyway, they're beautiful to watch. If you go down there any day, you'll see them. One of them flying around. I love squirrels. These are some pictures of squirrels that I've taken. They're wonderfully expressive. These two had a nice little, did a nice little dance for me in a feeding platform down at Cranberry Marsh. Love the look on this one's face, wondering if he can go up there to share the food. And he peeks over, ends up there sharing the food. This little song sparrow was not pleased that a big female cardinal wanted to share his food, and he flew away. These are 2 cedar waxwings. They share food. They feed each other. I was lucky enough to get this shot last spring at Fixin Woods, feeding berries to each other. Last week, as I said before we started the meeting, Fixin Woods is the warblers have descended on Fixin Woods. It's a great spot for them after they finished their migration across Lake Ontario. And I took a few pictures last week. This is a Blackburnian warbler. This is a yellow humped warbler. And this is a palm warbler. And I'm going to finish up with a few shots, very iconic shots of Bowmanville that we all know and love. I wonder what this swan is looking at when he sees these fishermen on the pier down in Bowmanville at the waterfront. West Side Marsh, popular fishing spot. And these are, they're usually there right on the shore, but earlier this spring, they were out. They were wading way out there. I think the water level has gone back up. I certainly hope it has. And I'm going to finish with the iconic shot of all, the fish at the fish ladder, salmon, I believe, swimming upstream. And thank you very much. That's the end.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. And as I said at the start, if anybody has stuff that they'd like to share that they've learned during the pandemic, things they've taken up, skills they've learned, what they've been doing that they want to share with us, we'd like to do a series. So let us know. Admin committee. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Joe. That was excellent. Birders fascinate me because of your patience and your keen eye to get pictures. I never see any birds when I'm out on a walk. Pauline, could I impose on you to tell everyone about the picnic that you, Linda, and Steve are planning?
Yes, so you should have received an email yesterday, everyone. We thought we'd have a little bit fun at the evening meeting, and there is a speaker plan, but after the speaker, we're going to just have a bit of a social time and possibly break into rooms, and we want you to enjoy some appetizers, a bit of a meal. We're calling it a picnic, And Steve Burnett has a contact, and he will have sent you a form to fill in, make your selection. I've seen these nibbler boxes. They're absolutely fabulous and such a great price. So hoping that we'll have good participation in this and just have a little bit fun and, you know, wind down together and chat, because our meetings are very much bang, 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 bang. And maybe it's time just to let our hair down and have some fun together. So please fill in that form, send Steve your money.
Excellent. Thank you, Pauline. With that, we've got Renee back. That's great. Renee, you've got our quote of the week, do you not? Or are we still having technical problems, Renee? Well, if we can't hear Renee, Amy, you've got Renee's quote. Would you like to deliver it for us?
I do so. This is from Denzel Washington. At the end of the day, it is not what you have accomplished. It is about who you have helped, lifted up, and made feel better. It is about what you have given back. And that's from Renee.
Well, thank you, Renee, and thank you for the delivery, Amy. With that, if there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, remember in the things that you say and you do, our four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I think I finally got it memorized. All right. With that, everyone have a fantastic week.
Have a good week, everyone.
Joining to our guests. Have a great day.
I know. Thanks, Joe.
Have a great day,
picture,
everyone.
Joe.
Bye, everybody.